Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. I am Chris DeSantis. I'm joined by one of the top dads in the Pacific Northwest, as rated by Pacific Northwest Dad Magazine, Joel Rawlings. Joel, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thank you. I'm waiting for the sucker punch, but go ahead, keep going.
No, there's no sucker punch. Authentically, we really respect your father game. Anybody who follows you on Facebook, they get a lot of content. And down in Texas, he's been on the pool deck with a used Ferrari's worth of tech suits for the Pac-12 championships. Erik.
Yes.
How are you, Erik?
I'm doing okay. They actually don't let me touch the pool deck at this point. I get to see it through a window.
Okay, right. I guess I understand. Yeah.
The amount of tech suits is accurate. That is true. Used Ferrari, probably late 90s.
So you're at the University of Houston pool. So you're watching at that rec center that's like past the swim down pool, like that glass. That's
yeah.
Just hard to see the finishes from there, I think. Yeah,
they're actually starting from that side, but it was still quite awesome to see the splits come through last night at that meet. So
yeah, I want to talk some impressions of the college championships that we've got ongoing right now. First, I just want to talk about news came out about the way that NCAA is going to be run this year. I have a Swim Swam article. I'm going to do the thrilling exercise of reading a news article live on a podcast. But I just want to sort of summarize some of the changes and get your guys' reaction to it. NCAA is in Greensboro. No spectator seating, obviously, including parents and family members. All participants are going to be seated. They have 2,000 seats, they say. I don't remember it being that big, but I guess it's possible that there's that much seating in Greensboro. And all the teams are going to be seated in that grandstand area. Alternates only come in the meet if there's a withdrawal in the first 24 hours. And they explain this is significant because there will probably be people that need to pull out due to COVID exposures after the first 24 hours, but they just don't want to deal with getting somebody into the meet, I think, really late. Uninvited relay participants must swim in at least one relay during the meet, and they may not fill an alternate slot if a scratch occurs. There's going to be no relay takeoff judges, so it's going to be all judged by video. Practice times. This one's significant. Joel and I were talking about this a little bit offline. Each team has only 2 deck passes for swim coaches. You can get a third one if you got your diving team there. And this is probably going to be a little bit hard for some of the combined teams in terms of deciding, who gets to be there. If you've got like a full squad at NCAAs and, you have 4 or 5 swim coaches. So I want to go, let me go to Erik first. Erik, your reaction to these changes to NCAAs?
I think it's about as smart and as safe as you can get. Still have the meet at this point. Looking at the way Pac-12's was last night, they had a combination of kids on deck that were there for that moment, and then kids up in the stands. And it really did spread things out. It made for a good meet because there were actually people spread out through the stands. There was noise. There was some excitement. So I don't think that we've already seen that with results from the women's meet last week with SECs and ACCs. It's going to be fast and it's going to be loud and exciting. The coaches' passes on deck, the first thing that I thought of was, well, there's going to be staff there. They just might not be able to be down on deck. So you become, crowd control essentially up in the stands or just managing athletes' emotions there. And if that becomes your job for that week, maybe that's better suited for a meet like this, where a coach doesn't have to worry about running around on deck. They're able to just monitor the athletes with those bigger teams, the combined teams, stuff like that. But no, I'm looking forward to a knock on wood, safe and exciting NCAA championships.
Yeah, Joel. I mean, I never pass up an opportunity to make you the villain on this podcast. I mean, do you think based on these rules, they should be having an NCAA championship?
This is one of those, again, I know the trick. I know the trap. I can see it. I don't mind stepping in it. It's like, it's one of those deals where it's if should they have a meet? Well, if someone gets COVID, no, they shouldn't have had a meet. But it's one of those deals where you're already in it. You're already going through with it. You go full bore, and I think they're doing good. I mean, shoot, they could say everyone's going to be wearing a chicken suit and be like, done. As long as we're having it, fine, I'm doing that. And the real test is you're going to know exactly who's writing the workouts here when you go on deck, which coach is walking in with their coffee and which one's got the big bag full of all these tech suits, caps, and stuff like that. It's like, now we know where the power is in every swim team for real. It's like who's carrying the stuff and who's not on deck. I think it's good. I think it's they're running it. Again, it's one of those people want to argue about having a meet too late. The meet's already going. Get it to it. They're doing a safe job with it. And then, if you're not back at night, your kids aren't swimming in the afternoon, go to the Drury Inn. They should be a sponsor. You have 2 free drink tickets off there. It's a nice little deal. And you get a free meal and you can pocket your per diem. So I'm all for it. I'm all for Greensboro having it. Just roll it. It's too late. It's too late to be asking those kind of questions. You guys are already in it.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I know that we've reached this. I think we're sort of at a tipping point. If I step away from the swimming situation with a lot of things, where it's like, we've been cautious for so long, and then we have really evolved in terms of all the precautions that we're taking around things. The only thing that I read in this that I would have liked to see, and I said it to somebody else, and they said, well, that's sort of a given that people are going to do that. And I said, okay, but how about not make it a given? How about make it a part of it is, what about, something similar to what's happening with airline travel right now, where, everybody that's coming to the meet, we know that they've had a PCR COVID test within 72 hours of when they took off, to travel there. And I guess there's an assumption going that most of the people are going to do that, but I color me as somebody who doesn't necessarily take everybody at their word that they're going to do that. And if I was somebody participating in the meet, I would like that as just a sort of one more layer of precaution in a meet like this. But yes, otherwise it's let's get on with it. Let's have a championship meet. We're having these other championship meets. We're having these conference championship meets. We're in a big facility. We've got the room to spread out. And yeah, finally to the point with the 2 coaches, it's if you didn't have an assistant coach, here's Swim Slam. Okay. I know you don't take my editorial advice very seriously. And I know you, if you listen to this podcast, it's a hate listen for you, but here's what I want. Okay. At NCAAs, I would like you to report on which 2 coaches are on the deck for every team, because a team without somebody with that, top assistant coach title, the associate head coach title, you're going to find out who's, as you said, Joel, you're going to find out who's at the top of the pecking order. And if I was still at Georgia Tech and Courtney picked me to be down on the pool deck with her, you better bet in the off season, I'd be like, look, I need that associate head coach title, because I've been down on the pool deck. I'd be surprised if Bill Koppelman, 6'8" Bill Koppelman, is not the person standing next to Courtney when they bring their squad to NCAAs here in a few weeks.
Because it'd be Chris out there, cargo pants, big backpack. She'd be like, swim cap, there, lightsaber, check, gum, number 2 pencil, highlighter. What you need. Pulling stuff out of every pocket.
And be honest, I would be horrible at that job. Like,
then how are you supposed to be our associate head coach here?
That's right. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about these college championship meets. I'll go back to Joel here first. Joel, we've got women's Big Tens are underway. The women's ACC meet has taken place. We've seen women's SECs. I gave a shout out to the greatest Danish-American swim coach in America, Lars Jarensen, earlier this week for his SEC title with Kentucky. But Joel, what stood out to you from some of these championship meets that are either completed or underway right now?
Man, I love watching like SECs going. It's just crazy. I mean, what Florida is doing is on the guys' side year after year. That's all Anthony right there, man. He doesn't get. I mean, I'm sure in the SEC he gets credit. I mean, the dude's won all these coach of the year titles. But as far as like Midwest and the West, dude's getting no love. There's a guy like I would pay to listen to the guy cough. I mean, the guy. It's like run a clinic on anything. I'm listening. I mean, the way those guys do those turns. The strokes they do the 400 IM. You put 5 dudes like in the finals of 400 IM. Like, I want to see how that guy coaches. Those guys, they do work. I think a lot of times you get like those cutesy little clips started back with flow swimming. Like, hey, look at these guys soaring up after some 25s and 100s. Let's see the sprint thing. Let's watch Florida's workout. I bet it's just work and it's getting it done and they're doing it right. Florida is being Florida again and again and again.
Wait, Joel, are you leaving to join WorkWorks Nation with me and leaving Erik alone on Race Pace Island?
I'm an Anthony Nesty fan hat. If they have those, I'm buying that. Getting Gator clappers. And then on the women's side, love watching what Tennessee's doing. I mean, they had a big graduating class, and they have what their seniors doing as well. It's really cool to watch what they've done. Big Ten swimming, I feel a lot like Big Ten football, where I should love it more being from the Midwest, but I don't watch it. It's just exciting. It's like Big Ten basketball. Not going to watch that either, really. I'll watch it in the finals, but it's like, it just doesn't do it. I mean, I think Wisconsin will be really good in a couple of years, but right now it's Ohio State. So it's kind of dull. I'd rather watch Kieran Smith. I'd rather watch a lot of other swims at SECs.
It does feel like there's really actually, even within power conferences, here's my hot take where people can, coming down the pike, my Sarah Schustrom is just as good as Ledecky take coming. I really feel like there's 3 tiers of, even within the Power 5, there's really 3 tiers of conferences. There's the SEC as like 1A. Mm-hmm. You've got the ACC as 1B. And then I kind of think that it's not really fair to put the Big Ten in there with Big 12 and Pac-12. But in terms of like that top to bottom conference that you want to watch, yeah, like once I get past the first few lines of like Big Ten results, I kind of lose interest in what's going on. Whereas like the ACC, like I'm looking, or the SEC, like I'm looking in these B heats. Like there's first off, I'm looking in these B heats for SECs because there's a couple Danish guys swimming. There's a kid on Missouri and there's a kid on Auburn. And these kids are like really, really good swimmers. Finish B finals at SECs. And I totally agree with you on your Florida point. I think it's like I'm turning into a Florida fanboy as well because people who listen to the podcast know my boss here at Wahoo's. He's a volunteer assistant coach for a couple years at the University of Florida. So I get nonstop Florida propaganda, basically just beamed directly into my ear about how everything they've ever done is amazing. Not really, but it's a slight exaggeration. But I do think that there's an institutional thing here that goes from when Greg Troy was coach straight to the present day. Like I look at in that 500 freestyle A final, obviously Karen Smith, incredible. And he was a top recruit out of high school, although the development you can't argue with. But everything looked like a layer down. There's a kid, Alfonso Mestra, who finished with a 4.12, right? I watched that kid swim in high school, He was like, I think just under 430. So the development to take somebody from, 428 or whatever down to 412, he's a sophomore in college, is pretty incredible. And I do think like one of Florida's little secrets is, yes, they always do well with distance swimmers. Somebody from the Northeast, they do a really good job getting kids from the northeastern states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, that are good recruits, but not great recruits. And they just swim great at Florida. And the one that I was sharing with my boss is a guy back in the mid 2000s, Tobias Work, who just did awesome at NCAAs in distance. And he was, like a good distance swimmer from Massachusetts, but Massachusetts, not exactly the hotbed of American swimming. Erik, what stood out for you in watching these meets?
Oh, you guys have said so much. I mean, it's nice.
We always make you go last so we can steal all your points.
So I've just checked pretty much all of them off. Last week's women's SECs and ACCs, just so fun to be able to see the results come through and just be excited for what's coming forward. Virginia was, they're reloading, even not that they're losing anybody, but the next couple of years, it's going to be interesting to see what happens at NCAAs and then make that real push against Cal and Stanford and whether or not they can do it. Like you said, with Big Tens, it's Ohio State is just churning through this meet right now already and distancing themselves from Michigan, and then it's kind of everybody else for themselves. Men's SEC is the first thing that I thought of when I started looking through the finals results. Was I feel like I'm reading results from NCAAs like 3, maybe 4 years ago at the most. Like looking at the top 8 for the 500, I was like, I swear this looks all too familiar to looking at NCAA championships. It's just so deep and so fast. We talked about Florida. They've got freshman guys throwing down. They got a sub-19 50 freestyler. They got second in the 500 was a freshman.
No, Chris, their distance program. They must have winners.
And that conference itself is super young. On the guys' side, I just took the 50 freestyle. There's 1 senior in the top 8.
Oh my God! And
2 in the B heat, and it's just everybody else is for the most part sophomores and under. And is there anything? And I'm a big fanboy of I've kind of A&M is really growing on me. Living in this area for the last 3 years and watching what they're doing, being up there for a couple of practices, they are a smoldering, growing fire, and I don't know if there's anybody more versatile that with 400 and under than Shane Casas right now. I don't know if there's anything he can't do that's 400 and under, and it wouldn't surprise me this summer if he's in contention to a final in pretty much everything 400 IM, minus maybe the 2 breast or 1 breast that would maybe conflict with something else. But it's just to go 20 point in that 50 back in the 131 and the 139 in the 2 IM, and just he's going to have a 4 IM. It's exciting to watch this team really come on and put things together. And then watching the women's Pac-12, when I saw 2 relays last night, and it is a clear separation between 1 and 2, and then 2 and everybody else. And no offense to all the hard work that they're doing in the midst of that pandemic, but it's Cal and it's Stanford and it's the rest of their squads, and then it's everybody else. I mean, it's going to make for an interesting NCAA top 5 duke it out in Greensboro there.
And what do you think, like, Erik, you said again before we started recording, like, I got to start recording earlier so we can get some of this B-roll of the conversations we have before things start. But, you say it's Cal and Stanford. Let me put you on the spot here. Who do you think is going to win that Pac-12 championship?
Oh, it's Cal right now. Their depth is so much. And if anything is any more clear than looking at the results of the women's 400 medley relay, they took first and third, and they had six very, very good girls for that 800 free relay, and two of them swam on the beat. So it's going to make for an interesting week of fast swimming.
Yeah, and I can imagine. I mean, what's interesting to me listening to that is I can imagine it's got to have been very hard to run a swim team in California over the past 6 months or whatever. Like, if anybody, I guess I should say, like, if you're up in the Pacific Northwest, that's probably been the hardest place in the country to.
There isn't collegiate swimming up. Well, there's no Division I swimming up here anymore. It's all been sucked out.
You got Washington State.
That's like a different country, man.
I know. Hey, I've been there.
Once you get over those mountains, man, that's, I don't know. They run their own stuff out there. They got ammo. I'm not messing with them at all.
Yeah, you are only a few miles from Idaho, literally. I mean, like.
Yeah, I'm not messing with that.
Having been to Pullman several times, you can stay at a hotel in Moscow, Idaho. I don't even know if that's how you say it. Moscow. I don't know. The Russian capital, but in Idaho. Joel, any reactions to the Pac-12 stuff?
Yeah, I think what they're, like you were saying with California and the swimming, man, all collegiate coaches right now, I nothing but respect. I mean, keeping their teams together, things, especially in California, like how many times they're running practices, all the protocols, the 18 different layers of institutional paperwork that must be going on a daily basis that no one ever thinks about, and to still coach. You got all this other stuff going, and there's still great coaching going. And we were talking earlier about Erik saying is like, recruiting against Stanford and Cal must be tough. It's like what Cal is doing is, I think, it's just amazing. I mean, you look at like if SwimSwam does their top recruiting result things, Cal's never like the number one recruiting class ever. But look at what they're doing year in and year out.
Maybe they were like a decade ago when they, got like Missy Franklin and Rachel Bootsma and, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
but recently, I mean, this class, it's
not in recent years. You're right.
Right. And my wife is a Stanford grad, so I have to get that Kool-Aid thrown at me.
Man.
And I've been on that campus, and it's like just the gods made a university. Like it never cloud. They can afford to blow the clouds away, so it's just all sun coming down, green, beautiful pools. I'm coming on that campus like, just sign me up. What do I have to do? I'm here. You go to Cal, you get hit by cars, you're dodging, but it's like what they're doing there is just amazing work, I think. And not to belittle what Stanford's doing. I mean, but geez, to go against that is just awesome. And to root for Stanford is like rooting for the Yankees. It's like what Doug Stanhope said about the Yankees. Like rooting for them is like going to Vegas and rooting for the house to win. Why you got to be that jerk? It's like root for someone else. Florida and Cal right now, those are my teams I love watching. I would love to hear those coaches speak about anything, anytime. I would pay money for that. They're doing great work.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I've always been
about the Yankees sucking. It's about time.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, I am from the Boston area. Right. I literally owned a Yankee suck T-shirt. Spent $15 outside Fenway Park for a Yankee suck T-shirt. I've disavowed those days now because looking back, I mean, I think our obsession with the Yankees was counterproductive to Red Sox fandom. But and plus we've settled down. We've won a few World Series and got that 1918 curse of Babe Ruth off our.
So you're saying you don't like Stanford anymore? All right, there you go. There's a hot take.
Yeah,
Chris hates Stanford.
Don't worry about it, guys. The Brewers will come around, okay? It's just it'll be the Brewers' turn here in the next couple of days. That's right. Erik, any other thoughts, or we'll go to on the meets, and otherwise we're going to go to our final monologues here.
No, we've got a lot of swimming left here in these conference championships. Me especially here, we go from women's Pac-12s right into men's Pac-12s the next day. So it's going to be a good couple of weeks.
All right, Eric. So Joel doesn't steal your final monologue. I'm going to let you go before him, and hopefully maybe you can steal what he was going to say, and ruin his day for once. And then he'll have to think on his feet, which I know is not really his specialty.
Yeah, no. Preparation is the key.
I'm just trying to stay upright right now. So I apologize to all 7 of your watchers here for the display that I have on right now. Just went under sinus surgery on Monday and still recovering. Chris is running me like an Amazon worker. He's like Jeff Bezos this week. I have to do this
bathroom breaks,
podcast
Jeff.
for him. He still hasn't paid me yet for the first several weeks of this podcast. I'm waiting on that check. Joel doesn't know he's not getting paid.
Oh,
is he?
yeah. Don't bring that up.
Sorry. But in any event, I had talked about this before about taking care of yourself. I'm trying to do it right now. It's been a very humbling experience trying to recover from this surgery and function as a human being. I can only imagine and thinking about what Joel had said about the college coaches and trying to function on a day-to-day basis with COVID and run your teams. And my hat's off to everybody who's got to pull this job during this time and hold it all together, or at least seem like they're holding it all together. I commend you all, and I look forward to seeing the fruits of all of your labor over the next several months as we push through Tokyo. So
awesome. All right, Joel, what you got?
I was totally going to talk about fruits of labor too, man. Shoot, he's took it all. He took my whole.
What is your favorite fruit of labor? Is it getting paid?
Well,
listen.
This podcast is awesome because I used to coach club, and so I'm looking at now I'm just working for free.
Right.
That's a great deal. I'll take that anytime, man.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is, we don't pay by the word, Joel. So
now it's coming together now. I think one thing that's really interesting is just how with freestyle right now, it'll be interesting to see where swimming evolves. If all of a sudden that kind of that loping stroke, all of a sudden everyone's gonna be like, that's it. There's the key. Everyone back on board. Kieran Smith, Jake McGahey, we're all going to go back to this kind of swimming. And I think that's the thing is you start looking from the outside in about what these strokes look like, and you start trying to retrofit that. It just doesn't work. I think it's one of those things where these strokes these guys are doing evolved. You just look at mainly like the physics behind a lot of that stuff. Like we talked about like Florida's turns and things, how they're getting into it and out of the walls, how they're hitting their breakouts. I mean, for short course yard swimming, that's where it's at, and it's just interesting to see the evolution of freestyle and some of the different sets. Hopefully we get away from that early vertical forearm and get on to something else so it's a little more meaningful. But yeah, it's fun to watch the swimming.
Yeah, I was educating your former swimmer here in the office, Jake.
Don't try to pin that one on me.
No. He's got some gaps in his historical knowledge that I'm trying to address, Joel. I mean, it just seems like his college coach didn't really talk to him about history, and so I couldn't believe it. He didn't know who Hans Fasnacht was a couple days ago. I know both of you are big fans of Hans Fasnacht, so I had to educate him all about Hans Fasnacht, the first man who swam the NCAA 1650 with a 6-beat kick the entire way, and therefore sort of threw the gauntlet down that you can actually use your legs for an entire mile swim. And then people started emulating that. And then Janet Evans came in and just, swinging her arms around, and everybody's like, oh, you got to just swing your arms around as fast as you possibly can. And then, everybody thought Alex Popov was doing a super high elbow catch. So Ian Thorpe nearly, ripped his shoulder off trying to emulate that. And here we are today. And God forbid people try to emulate Michael Phelps, the way he swam anything. That's for another podcast. I want to finish with something we were discussing off air, and I want to make another podcast recommendation for you. And I'm hoping to get the guy who hosts this podcast on my podcast. I've been in discussions with him, but there's a podcast out there called Poolside Pass. There's about 6 episodes of it. One of them has Eddie Reese on it. That one is quite good. The latest one has Terry McKeever. And as a group of Terry McKeever fanboys, I could not recommend this podcast more. There are so many pieces of it that, like, if you're a coach, there's just simply explained fundamental coaching concepts that she gets into. And so there's like literally like 10 things you'll hear in this podcast where you go like, ooh, yeah, I could, take that away and do something with that. She is really wonderful in terms of describing some of her own insecurities, which you don't often get in that format. There's like a lot of like the podcast format, and I've been guilty of it as well. You get like a lot of backslapping and like a lot of like, hey, tell me more about how great you are. And then they, go on and on and on. She said some really interesting stuff about the early part of her career and, addresses at some point how she thinks she would do if she was coaching a combined team. I mean, describes why swimmers should compete in a wide variety of events, talks about some of their dryland stuff, tons of tips for the psychological side of coaching. And so somebody who, as I said, has really admired Terry. I thought it was like a really, really good interview and a really good listen. So is that podcast almost as long as the explanation you gave of the podcast, or is it about equal?
Yeah.
Most of the questions asked by the interviewer are longer than the description that I just gave. It's about 50 minutes long, and I would say 40 minutes of it is Terry talking. So you basically get like a Terry McKeever ask a talk in a podcast
for free.
For free. That's right.
That's awesome.
Anyway, guys, thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing your time. Joel, as always, thank you for your free labor. Erik, I'll continue to, share the net revenue that I'm making off this podcast.
Fantastic.
You can
fractions of a penny.
There's just dollars in Erik's bank account.
Now, it might be a little less than that. I think I'm just good, but I'll probably mail Erik some pieces of printer paper. That's basically what we've got so far. But
good for one free back rub.
That's right. That's right. We really appreciate your efforts. But thank you guys, and I'll see you next week.